You likely started your practice with passion and purpose, but do you now feel overworked, underpaid, and burnt out? If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. In fact, that's where I found myself at one point. I believe that every healthcare provider chose this profession because they truly wanted to help people. But along the way, practices often drift from their original vision. Their practice slowly turns into something that they never wanted, that's stressful, financially unstable, unfulfilling, and misaligned with their values. I know this because I lived it. After decades of working as a healthcare provider, I've helped hundreds of others see how easy it is to lose their vision and lose direction, but also rebuild and regain the practice that they've always wanted. In this video, I want to help you plan to take your first few steps back towards the practice of your dreams. As you can imagine, this is a really large conversation. This is not something that is solved in a 5 or 10 minute video. In fact, the process of really solving this is going to take weeks and months because this is not an overnight fix. In addition to this conversation and getting you started, I've also written a book on the topic, The Fulfilled Physician, because I know the steps that everybody needs to take to really refocus and steer their practice back in the direction that they want. The practice of your dreams is not the practice of my dreams. And so there are very individual components that would make your business very different than mine. But the principles of how to change the course of your practice are essentially universal for everybody. So if you're interested in a copy of this book, we'll put a link in the description below so that you can grab yourself a copy and get started on that journey. But in the meantime, let's talk about the first few steps you might want to take to start that process. One of the first steps that every provider needs to take is to redefine their vision for their practice, the mission of their practice, the big why behind what you're doing, and your values. What's your decision-making matrix for how you're going to get to that vision? Maybe you've done some of that work before, and so you're thinking, yeah, I've done that 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Listen, this is a living document. Your mission, your vision, your purpose, and your values need to be reevaluated annually. 1, for the commitment to sticking to them, and 2, to make minor changes as your life and your goals change. So if you've never done this exercise before, or if you've done it, but it's been 10 or 20 years, you must start in that place. Redefine those different areas so that you can recommit to that journey. And so if you feel like your current practice is not in alignment with what you thought practice was going to look and feel like, it is because the decisions that you've made around your business over these years have been incongruent with your vision, incongruent with your values. How could you possibly end up in the right place if your decision-making along the way was incongruent? Just to understand why this is important and how those different pieces come together. They're not just words. We hear mission and vision and values. These are not just individual words. This is literally the steps you take in your business because your business is a journey. Imagine you were walking through the woods. Your vision is the destination. Once I go through this full journey, where do I hope to end up? Your mission is, how are you going to get there? In fact, it's literally the map you're going to use to get from where you are today to that new destination. Your purpose is, why are you doing this? It will get hard at times. If you're in practice for any amount of time, you know that it gets hard and you know that you need to make difficult decisions. Your why is your reason to keep going. So on those mornings where you wake up, I don't know if I can do this. Your why is what gets you out of bed. And your values are your compass. When you're faced with difficult decisions, when you know you're at a fork in the road and you can go one of 2 or 3 different ways, your values drive the direction. Too often we allow ourselves to make decisions based on emotion. And especially if you're burnt out, some of those emotions are really irrational. And now we're making decisions based on irrational emotional feelings. That will never get us to the destination that we were hoping for. When you're in that place and you need to make a difficult decision, you take out your map, you take out your compass, and you realign yourself with where you are on the map and what decision-making matrix you need to have to make sure that you're moving in the right direction toward the destination that you had originally decided upon. Even if your current business is relatively stable, but you're feeling burnt out, you're starting to feel overworked, you're starting to feel undervalued. Those are early warning signs. Those are symptoms of the fact that the business structure that you have in place are not in alignment with your vision, your mission, your purpose, and your values. Take those signs seriously and begin to work on these things as soon as possible. So if you already know that your practice is grossly out of alignment, or you're starting to feel some of the signs and symptoms that you're moving in that direction, I want to share with you 3 common sources of why our practices lead us to feeling this way. So 3 of the main causes that drive our practices off course would be incongruent policies and procedures. We all have policies and procedures in place, some of which were put proactively in place because we knew we needed a policy for X, Y, or Z, but many of them are often reactive in nature, and those are usually the ones that are pushing us off course. Taking the time to look through our policies and procedures and compare them to our vision and values especially is a great way to start understanding which policies and procedures are congruent and we should continue to keep, and which ones we need to start to refocus and reshape to get them back in alignment with the values that we have inside of our practice. This includes categories like your cancellation policy, your scheduling policy, your recall policies, or your billing policies. All of these need to be congruent with the values of your practice. Another source that may be draining you is being open to treating anyone who is willing to pay you rather than really working on targeting your ideal patient or your ideal client. We all have patients when we see their names in the schedule, we can't wait to see them on that given day. On the flip side, we also all have patients when we see their name, we're almost hoping that they call out sick. While we may feel that emotionally as we look at our schedule, perhaps you've actually never sat down to realize what is it about the person that you're looking forward to? And what is it about that other person that you're not looking forward to? Define your ideal client, understand who your ideal client is, and work on increasing the ways to target that ideal client so that you have a practice full of patients that you can't wait to see. In our office, we did 2 things. We identified the patients that felt like they were draining us, and we actually did some work to figure out how were we attracting them? Where were they coming from? We started to shift away from any money or effort being put in that direction. And then on the other side, we would actually open dialogue with our ideal patients. You know, when I see your name in the schedule, I can't wait to see you and catch up. I wish I had a practice full of people just like you. Do you know anyone else, friends, family, that you think might benefit from the services that we offer here? And we would encourage our ideal clients, our ideal patients to refer friends and family who are more like them into our office to increase the likelihood that we can reach and serve more of our ideal patient. A third source of why someone might start feeling burnt out or especially undervalued is having a fee schedule that is not congruent with the value that you're delivering. In particular, especially if you participate with insurance at all, you're being undervalued on a regular basis. The entire model of insurance reimbursement actually separates the patient from paying for the value that they're receiving. And as that third-party payer continues to drop reimbursement, it starts to force the practitioner to see more people work harder and get paid less per patient throughout the course of their career. That is the perfect setup for burnout and being undervalued. If that's you, breaking free of that model is very difficult, but it's possible. And one of the first steps in that journey could be to begin offering services that are automatically not insurance reimbursable. Begin offering modalities and services that are incredibly valuable, but have zero chance of being reimbursed by insurance, and then start shifting your current patient base into understanding that, well, certain services that we provide are insurance reimbursable, and perhaps you're going to continue to do that. However, you're committed to improving the value and the service that you offer in your clinic for your community. And this is an incredibly powerful tool that will deliver many times the value that will certainly help these patients reach the goals that they have in mind for their health. However, insurance does not cover that, and that you've designed a self-pay model so that patients can afford to have access to and pay for this new service that you've chosen to deliver inside your clinic. Separately from expanding outside of the insurance model, many of us don't really know what to charge for a lot of the services that we do. And if we've put any thought into it at all, perhaps we compare the services that we do for cash pay to be maybe similar to what insurance was paying, in which case we're automatically undervaluing ourselves. In other cases, you might be looking around at other practitioners offering similar services and either price matching or finding out what they're charging and then choosing something lower. That will be the fastest way to zero. You cannot undervalue what you're delivering. You are much better off looking around to see what other people are charging. Pick a number higher than that, which forces you to figure out how to deliver even more value every time you treat somebody so that those patients feel that value exchange. If you've picked a fee schedule that you're comfortable with, I can promise you, you're undervalued. You need to have some idea of what the market is willing to pay for these types of services, and then you need to raise that price until you start to feel uncomfortable. Because that discomfort that you feel will be your driving force to make sure that the value you're delivering on each session well exceeds the price that a person is paying. Another really important distinction to make, another one of my mentors once said, price is what the patient pays. Value is what the patient receives. And when you understand it that way, and you make sure that you're always delivering a little bit more value than the price that that patient paid, the relationship between you and that patient can be very long lasting. If your fees are higher than the value you deliver, patients will automatically discontinue care because the patients consciously or subconsciously will know that they are not receiving the value that they're paying for. An easy metric to understand if you're potentially overvalued would be that your patients are prematurely discontinuing their care plan before your recommendations were complete. On the other side, if you're charging significantly less than the value that you're delivering, the symptom that you will notice is resentment. You will start to resent your patients consciously or subconsciously. You will feel like you're giving your patients so much and that they're not appreciating the value that you're giving them. So if you've ever noticed those feelings, it's not that you're giving too much. Quite honestly, you could never give too much to your patients. It just means that you're not receiving your value back, and your fee schedule needs to change to reflect the value that you are delivering. If you resonate with any of the above that we've just been talking about, I strongly suggest that you begin to evaluate your practice. Again, starting with your mission, your vision, your purpose, your values. And then once you establish those, that leads right into evaluating your policies and procedures, whether or not you're serving your ideal client and how to get more, and then evaluating your fee schedule and making sure that all of the above is completely congruent with the vision, mission, purpose, and values that you've created in the beginning. If you need help with that process, or you finish that process and then you want to know the next step, grab yourself a copy of The Fulfilled Physician. It's a book. There's a workbook that goes with it. There's an audiobook that you can use. And what that book provides you is the roadmap for making these decisions and making these changes, getting yourself back on track so that the practice that you continue to build into the future is far more congruent and more likely to reach the destination that you were always hoping for. For some practitioners, a video like this, a little bit of guidance, and maybe a book to provide the roadmap, that's all you need to get going. And that's great. If that's you, grab a copy of the book, go through the content, go through the steps, and guide yourself back on track. Some of you could use more support than that. And we do offer a whole series of business consulting that actually takes you on that journey with me together to get back to that place that you were hoping for. If that sounds more like you, shoot us an email and we will reach out to you to set up next steps. I appreciate your time and attention, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.